Just go through the process, person, they walk in your office or they call you right now or email you. And from the time that they meet you until the time they close, on your end, what goes on?
So typically when we first get that call for the pre-approval and everything, we try to jump on that pretty quickly as far as getting the full application, getting those documents that we had mentioned up front to make sure that we can give you the solid pre-approval. And then at that point you go out, put an offer in, hopefully get under contract, and that can happen pretty quickly depending on everything, or it can take a little while, like you said, especially in this market. So we usually say the pre-approval is is good until the credit expires, which is somewhere around I think 120 days or so. And at that point we're like, okay, well, let's just repull credit, make sure everything's still good. So we can kind of hang on to it for a little while depending on how long it takes. But if it's something where you come to me, everybody's kind of ready to go, you get under contract pretty quickly, then typically it's going to be between a 30 and 45 day process. Could even be less if you count business days, because you're not accounting for us working on the weekends or anything. So really, we get the contract back from you, and that's kind of when the fun starts. I always tell people, I'm like, hey, it's going to be like pretty hot and heavy in the beginning because we're getting the documentation, we're kind of getting everything rolling.
It's all time sensitive.
Right.
It's all time sensitive.
Yeah, so the quicker and better everybody can kind of work together on getting each other the documents and things, the faster we're going to be able to get it closed. Because if we're running around tracking people down and saying, hey, we sent you this, can you sign it, send it back, then it kind of gets to be one of those things where then I'm having to come to you and be like, I'm struggling to kind of get stuff, and
can we get this?
Yeah,
a document over?
Right.
We're all on a timeline, and all the different parts of people who you have to deal with to get a home. We all are on the same timeline to get that closing day done. And from the closing attorney, the lender, the realtor, we all work together in different parts, and one hold up on one part will hold up the whole process.
Right.
So to make that day, we all kind of have to get things in on time and just speak with each other and you, and a lot of it is just getting things on your end too.
Yeah, and the closing date, that's big. I mean, when we see that closing date on the contract, we are like, hey, we're going to make it, and that's kind of the biggest thing, because if that's what's in the contract, the sellers may be closing on their house, the next day, and it's all kind of like a domino effect.
It is.
So we try to really honor, hey, if this is the closing date, let's everybody work, to try to make that. And so, once we get all the documentation that we need, up front, from there, that's when we try to get the appraisal ordered, which typically takes between 5 to 7 business days. Could be a little bit longer depending on the volume that we're up against, which has been high lately, just with the market the way it's been.
It is.
And so we wait on that, and the file typically, will end up going to processing, and there may be a few days where not really much is going on, which I always try to tell people. I'm like, hey, that's normal. We got a lot of your stuff up front. We're waiting on the appraisal to come back. There's not really much we can do right at the moment. There are things that are going on behind the scenes that you probably don't know about, and we're just not, asking you for more documentation. There's things on our end that we have to do, and so, I'm like, don't freak out if you hadn't heard from us. Like, it's normal. And
because
so
a lot of the things that you do, as well as the closing attorney, are just behind the scenes.
Right, like title work and making sure that we're getting all that stuff, and then the appraisal will come back. That kind of will determine what happens next. Hopefully we'll have met the value and we're good to go there. If there's any repairs that the appraiser comes back with that need to be fixed, typically if you have repairs on an appraisal, they're required by the lender to be complete before the loan closes. So you'll get them back, and sometimes they don't have repairs, and we say that's as is, which is nice. So anytime you get an appraisal back that's as is, we're like, all right, we're good.
Those are always
Yes.
They save a headache.
Yes, for sure. So at that point when it comes back, that's kind of what we're waiting on, because then we've got to get with you and the listing agent if there's repairs to say, hey, we need this fixed, if we can, before closing and everything. And so it's almost kind of, you get back to getting everybody back involved, making sure we're good there. And then after that, like I said, my process processor, she'll pick it up. If there's any more documentation, which this is sort of where, she goes in a little bit deeper before it goes to underwriting. So, if there's a bank statement that we got and there's, a deposit in there that we need to track and say, hey, here's a large deposit, where did that come from? We may have to source the funds. Basically a lot of what we do is basically just following the paper trail and sourcing everything and making sure that everything has been validated and verified and all that kind of stuff. So, it's not uncommon for her to send a new list of, hey, I need kind of some updated documentation on this because it may have expired or, whatever it is. Or if there was a credit inquiry that we need to make sure that no new debts were opened that we didn't account for. And then she sends it into underwriting. Typically, it may take a couple days kind of for the underwriters to do it. And knowing my personal processor, she's usually pretty good. She'll send it in and she kind of like hits it on the head, and we don't typically get it back with too many things, but that's what underwriting's for. They are the ones that are like literally combing through with a magnifying glass, making sure that we've done our due diligence up front, which hopefully we have. But
underwriters are the last.
Yes.
Who have to sign off on it.
Yes, they're kind of the last stop. So it really is kind of an assembly line. I mean, everything sort of starts with me up front and going that way, and then my processor is kind of that next stop to where she gets into it even deeper. And then underwriting is, they're the ones that are checking to make sure that all of the guidelines through, the investors and say Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, you've heard those terms, all of those guidelines have been met to, government standards and things that we can and can't do, or if there's something that we may have missed, they're going to ask us to kind of go back to the borrower again if there's what they call conditions, before it can close, if we need any more documentation. So at that point, once those conditions, if there are any, have been met, that's when you hear us say, okay, we got the final approval, we're clear to close, whatever it is, we've made sure, the funds are there, everything from the beginning was still all fine. And then at that point, it goes to our closing department. They get with the attorney, they make sure all the numbers are correct, and then that's when we kind of go back to the buyer and say, here's your exact number that you either need to wire or get a cashier's check, or again, like I said, there's certain instances where they don't need to bring money to closing because so in that case, that's kind of when everything's finished, everybody goes to the closing table, everybody's happy, celebrating, and that's when we can breathe.
yes, and that brings us right at the end of the whole process. And so I do appreciate you walking us through the start of that first initial phone call and saying, how do I get a home loan and what do I need to do? Walking us on through all the steps and briefly hitting on the different kinds of loans that are out there as well. So is there anything else you want to add on to it? Yeah, well, again, I'm Sophie Sandlin Rains. I'm with Community Mortgage, and I'm happy to help you through the process. My contact information, you can call me, you can text me. I try to be just available, anytime. I know that a lot of times people are looking at houses after 5 o'clock when they get off work on weekends. We try to be available to you and your clients, anytime that we can be there. And I just appreciate you asking me to do this. It was fun. Hopefully we can do it again. That wraps us up. Be sure to click on a link somewhere that goes on to the next part of the process, which will be looking for your home. Thank you guys for watching.
Thank you.
Preston Williams doesn't just list homes, he sells them.